Myself and Florida Keepers, we want to get started on a interview series where we go around the state and essentially talk to people, political, non-political, that are getting involved in, what Save Wild Florida might mean, how to enact that, kind of these changes that are happening to our state. Today we have Bryon White. He's up in Volusia. And so we're just going to be chatting with him about his efforts. And for the public, this shouldn't be construed as an endorsement at this time, but just a good conversation. So I'll hit it off. Bryon, why don't you introduce yourself, what you're doing, what you're about, and all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Bryon White. I'm running for Volusia County Council, District 3, which includes cities like New Smyrna Beach, Edgewater, Port Orange, Oak Hill, Osteen, that whole area. And I'm a co-founder of Yopon Brothers American Tea, which is my business side. And
Oh,
I founded an advocacy group here called Slow the Growth of Volusia. And I also serve on the board of Thousand Friends of Florida.
very involved. Very involved. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
So, obviously getting into the political process, which there's many different factors and, things to worry about. What position are you aiming for now? What spurred that? Most people don't just wake up one day and want to go for office. Maybe you did, but what kind of brought that upon you?
Well, yeah, the joke I always tell people is it's like probably the worst idea I've ever had. But I guess what I would say I was frustrated into it because I have tried with a lot of other people everything else. We've tried advocacy, we've tried litigation, we've tried
Okay.
activism, and I'm not saying none of those things work. They do, but the political solution here is, I think, the right path, at least for me, because I view our political system here in Florida, both at the state and local level, as being extremely compromised by development, industry, and interests. And we just have to change that. I think we have to change that first and foremost. We need to put people
Okay.
in the seat who are members of the community who actually care. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's
And yeah, no, and I can just on a pure looking at it from an outside perspective, I've seen the petitions, I've done many petitions, we've done the, grassroots efforts, and whatever issue it seems, and especially the growing one of, the development of our wild areas in Florida without the local input, it seems that the politicians don't really want to hear, or they give a bit of an olive branch, they give us a couple good items, and then it seems like the most of the concern is just kind of delayed at best. So I can certainly see where people, Florida Keeper is obviously very outspoken, where, we have to get more people, whatever party it might be, whatever background, doesn't matter. But just if you're interested in wild Florida, running for office is probably a much more viable option than just, continuous email campaigns, which sometimes work, sometimes don't. But kind of going into the more of the, what's really going on in Florida. I guess for you, because we've got, the FWC commissioners, we've got, the FDEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, we've got just the land developers themselves. Corruption's always there, but arguably getting worse. From your experience or what you've done, where do you kind of see, if you have to mostly point a finger, or maybe it's not just one person, but where would you say this is really where it's coming from? This is really where they're taking the voice from Floridians.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, the fundamental and most serious problem at every level, whether it's the state legislature or local governments, is the development industry, or the special interests that are peripheral to that industry, have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into our political system over the last several decades, and they expect a return on their investment, and
Yeah.
that return comes in the form of policy decisions that only benefit developers and no one else. And I think that is the thing that really needs to change most drastically and the most quickly, is we need to have a mindset and policy shift away from serving the development industry and towards serving not just the environment, but just normal citizens who, enjoy natural Florida and benefit from it. It's not just about, being out in nature. And I love that. I know you love that. But it's also about having clean water and having clean air and having a place to live that doesn't flood every time it rains,
Right.
you know? And so it's all tied together. And I think that's what we need to change most drastically.
Absolutely. And I think, that's at least for Florida, I kind of see it increasing where, as you said, this isn't really, maybe back in the day it was, but I don't think anymore it's an environmentalist issue. It's, a hunter that wants to have wild land to go and hunt deer. It's the fisherman who still wants to be able to go out and get, healthy fish and not being worried about every fish being just on a legal limit because the population isn't healthy enough. Or just people that see, oh, I had this cow pasture in my backyard for decades and decades, and it was beautiful. There was the ranch lands, and now, snap of a finger, it's 2,000 townhomes, and they know me and everyone else here did not want this. So it's growing past, I think, party lines, past interests in Florida, and I think that's a good thing. I think, like you touched on the nature part and the outdoors, since we're both into that, I guess what are your hobbies? What are your passions in the outdoors? What kind of, what's your favorite animal in Florida? What's that side of you about?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'm from New Smyrna Beach, so I love surfing. I mean, you can't live here and not surf. I mean, you can, but you don't want to. So
Right,
I'm really
right.
into that. I'm big into open water swimming. I was an ocean rescue lifeguard here in Volusia County for almost 20 years. So I'm
Oh,
into
awesome.
endurance sports like that. Yeah, and I'm also, I'm a farmer. I have the oldest organic farm in the state of Florida. So it's
That is
not just
awesome. Okay.
being out in nature, but it's also I understand the commercial side of conservation as well. And you're right. I agree with everything you said. It transcends party lines. It transcends interest, right? Personal and professional interest. And I think that especially at the state level, but also in a lot of local governments too, to me, what has changed is not that corruption is worse or the development stuff is worse. It's just that it's so
Okay.
flagrant. It's like it's blatant. They don't even try to hide it anymore. It's just like right in your face. And to me, it's almost like the attitude of Ron DeSantis and the legislature is just like, oh, hey, citizens, you're concerned about your quality of life and the environment. Well, how about you go fuck yourself? Like
Yeah.
we're going to do whatever we want. And we don't care if you have a problem with it. We don't care if you want to maintain your home rule or your quality of life or the environment. We simply do not care about your opinion. We disregard it completely. And we're going to help our, wealthy developer donors. And those are the only people that we care about. That's how it feels
Right.
to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I think to
Um,
even back that concern up, which is a partisan completely, is we're often, conservationists, animal welfare, hunters, whatever, we're often, because of that, having to act retroactively. It's
yeah.
always like, oh, they've decided 2,000 townhomes over that hill. We just found out about it. Let's do something. And that's where, at least politically, anyone, any background, wherever you are, hopefully that's more of a proactive, it is a proactive solution. So that way, instead of, the next 20 years, which I would fear, the continuation of email campaigns, petitioning, all this retroactive work, which is valid and we need it now. But if we can get to a point where it's, both parties, everyone in Florida is saying, we're happy with people in office and we know they're going to present the concerns of, my backyard being wild animals running around, good business. And I mean, as someone in business and with that background, I'm sure you can attest as well that the protecting the wild lands and all this isn't negating the economy or business or commerce. It's just, hey, this area is going to stay wild. It provides economic opportunities for hunting conservation there. But just because we protect that doesn't mean we're saying, we're trying to kill Florida's economy or something like that, which is
No.
often one of their arguments.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I mean, these are not mutually exclusive concepts.
Mhm.
The data bears it out every single time you math it out, it shows that preserving our natural resources and our green spaces is actually a good thing for our economy. And it
Yeah.
brings more visitors here. It helps industries thrive. And I think to me, all of that problem is tied to sprawl. Like urban
Mhm.
sprawl, suburban sprawl is a terrible growth model for the state of Florida. We should never have engaged in that. and it's way too late to put all of the genie back in the bottle. But we can make smart land use policies for the future that allow cities to be cities and allow
Mhm.
rural areas to stay rural. And I'm a firm believer in that type of policy implementation where we're not endlessly sprawling outwards into rural areas. I mean, it's just horrible. We need to have more dense, more well thought out planning in urban and suburban centers and stop just having planned communities, what we call 15-minute cities that are
Yeah.
low density, car dependent, built on the suburban fringe, and they're mostly converting, you know, agricultural land or wetlands or just raw land into golf courses and strip malls and suburbia.
Yeah.
And we're just
Yeah.
it's just a not a good it's not a good model.
Right.
We need to stop doing it. I mean, at all costs because we're running out of land, running out of water, depleting our natural resources, and we're frankly, even if you disregard all the environmental stuff and all of the, things like we want to protect the beautiful, sub layer of Florida that we all know and love, even if you have people that don't care about that want to just golf all day and go to the grocery store and that's their life, there's still the ones that are sitting through 3 cycles of traffic light every day. There's
Oh
still the
yeah.
ones that,
Yeah.
are going to run out of water just like everybody else. So these problems do reach through and impact every single person in this state. It has no bearing
Absolutely.
on political ideology or how they live their life. It's going to touch all of us, and it's going to do it within most of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
This is not future problem. I mean, it is, but it's also a right now problem. I mean,
Right. And especially, yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, it,
I ran.
no, you're good. You're good. No, I mean, there's a lot to be passionate about. And I think like you touched on it, but I think one of the kind of these underlying, I think Matt's talked about a bit, but a few others where it's going to become a really big problem soon for everyone is the imbalance in the solidification of our aquifers because we're pulling out too
Yeah.
much and essentially the salt and fresh tables being thrown off. And then there was a story a while ago where the meters they were using were outdated and were essentially just busted. And so, and obviously, no one wants to stop or no one wants to tell the big water companies or whoever to stop pumping water. And obviously, we all need water. I don't, I certainly don't want the water to stop. But if we're going to do it this way and just kind of go unmitigated, unchecked, we're going to hit something much worse than, slowing down a few things and asking a few more questions. And even I think one of the biggest lies they're kind of telling us with this housing thing is we have too many houses in Florida. Like even with what's built now and what's projected is way above even the migration to Florida, especially if you consider affordable housing, like not just the political use of that term, but actually what most people could come down here and afford um, with a manageable mortgage, not something that's going to put them in the grave. But we have more things being open. We in '08 we had the same thing with the ghost builds, and that's what I'm worried about. Is let's say we get 2, 3 years, 4 years down the road, and we've got a bunch of these ghost builds, just empty, hundreds and hundreds of acres of these, concrete sarcophagus just sitting around because we overbuilt. And if you go into the discussion of rewilding or how do we use this land now, once you dredge that land, take the water out, press concrete on it, it's so hard to return that land to anything,
Oh, yeah.
that's why I'm
So
worried
hard.
about. Yeah, because we've
And they
got,
put these
decisions
filters.
now are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
for
go ahead,
instance,
go ahead.
this is a huge problem. All these things are huge problems in my district that I'm running for, right? Like, so for
Yes.
instance, just like most other places in Florida, all of our water comes from the aquifer, pumping it
Mhm.
out. Most of the cities in Volusia County, but this is a statewide phenomenon, it's not just Volusia County, are at the top end of their CUP, which is their allowance for how much water they can pump. Most of them are in the top 90% of what they're allowed to do. And they're still
Wow.
building. Now they'll just move the goalpost when they hit the
Yeah,
legal
yeah.
line. But like City of Edgewater, which is in my district, has already had saltwater intrusion problems. They've already had to move their wells.
Okay.
Something like, you know, 80 or 90% of the municipal water supplies in Volusia County that have been tested have PFAS in the water. I mean,
Wow. Okay.
the springs here have PFAS in the springs.
Yeah, the
So
springs
like
are good one. Yeah.
we're already running on fumes in terms
Mhm.
of water use. And the solutions are our water is contaminated, or we're going to drink like poopy toilet water, or we're going to have to buy water from Georgia, or whatever the case may be. But none of the solutions are good. And I still think we have time to mitigate, not a lot of time. I mean, we need
Right.
action
Yeah.
but we need to mitigate these problems instead of ignoring them, instead of keep building on top of everything, changing the recharge areas into impervious surfaces. We're dumping shit everywhere. I mean, it's just a huge problem. Saltwater intrusion, contamination. Every Floridian relies on the aquifer every single day. I mean,
Yeah.
for our farm, we have a consumptive use permit on our farm.
Okay.
We don't ever hit the limit. We don't ever come close. We're very, stringent with our water use. But every city, every municipal supplier of drinking water has the same thing. They have a consumptive use permit from the water management districts, and most of the cities are almost tapping it out, and they're
Yeah.
still building. They're still building and building and building and building. I mean, here in Volusia County, we're about to build this huge planned use development called Deering Park that is going to be
Yeah.
the largest sprawl project in Florida's history. I mean, it's 70,000
Wow.
acres, 70,000 acres. And it's like,
Jeez.
why are we doing that? I mean, it was a totally asinine thing. But here in like New Smyrna Beach, for example, the city commission just fell all over themselves to make it happen. I mean, they wanted it
Yeah.
to happen more than anything in the world. So it's like this misalignment of priorities. Either they don't understand what they're doing or they don't care, whatever the
Right. And
case
now they
may
want a
be.
pay raise, right?
But yeah, they want to pay. They're
Yeah.
having a
Yeah.
special election on November 4th. And don't get me wrong, New
Yeah.
Smyrna is a wonderful place to live. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
a beautiful city. Our city commission right now is terrible, and they don't deserve a raise, frankly. But
Right. Right.
politicians don't last. They don't stick around forever, but their policies can last a really long time. So it's one of those things that I think citizens need to learn about how these issues impact them, and they need to vote. And they need to vote for people that care, not just these shiny, polished, well-funded. I mean, to me, if you look at like a
Right.
campaign finance
Right.
report, just,
That's all you
just that's
need.
for
Yeah.
everybody. Just follow the
Yeah.
money. If they're taking
Yeah.
if they're taking money from developers, big real estate companies, big insurance companies, things like that, don't vote for them. Just don't
Right.
vote.
Right.
I don't care if they're
And I think
Republican. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're NPAs or wherever. If they're taking money from large development companies, they should not be elected in Florida because time and time again, we are betrayed by the people we put in office, and they represent narrow self-interest over the interests of their citizens they're supposed to represent. And
right.
that's
Right.
that's not a good thing for anyone.
Yeah, and that's where it's just tricky where you've gotten this whole narrative where how many so many of our politicians, and it's obviously the state is, I mean, it's mostly Republican controlled, obviously, but you look across the board, local, and obviously when you get down to your like your city councils or your county commissions, it's like I don't like if I see a Republican one or a Democrat, I'm like, I don't even know what that means to the county level. I'm just gonna look at what they're doing because it's such a smaller demographic of an issue. But all of them, how many of them are saying just no to developers? We've have too much of this narrative or this idea in Florida, at least among our political class, where it's how can we work? How can we have a balance between the, environment, wild, ecological, and the, just hardline wildland development? And I've seen that brought up by different lawyers, by different development groups. And I think most Floridians, they already know it. It just hasn't translated into the political, I don't want to say elite because that's not true, but political class where it's like we have to start saying no, and the balance is not there anymore. The balance isn't, well, we're approving one development for every conservation land. It's more of like for every, I'm this isn't exact, but for every, I'd say 10 acres that are conserved, you've got about at least 100 or 150 being developed, at least in Florida right now. The
Right.
map, you look at the satellite maps, you look at just what Conservation Florida, the FWC puts out, and they do great work for conservation a lot of the time. But even if you take their successes, you're like, that's awesome, but they have this much of a success, let's say in the last 2 years, and then development has been promised, this much, in what they're building. It's just there's no balance anymore. It has to change.
You're right. There's no balance.
Yeah.
And it's actually, in my opinion, which could be wrong and maybe people don't agree with it, but my opinion is that this really isn't a partisan problem because I mean, yeah, Republicans are doing most of the bad things, but that's only because Republicans have all the power right now and have for
Right.
quite a while. And the only thing that's corrupting the system is money. If Democrats were in charge of everything, it would probably still happen because politicians want money for
Yep.
it's expensive to run a campaign. They want to win. And the way that they're taught to win is by raising as much money as possible, and the developers are who have the money and they're who are giving the money. So, I could easily say, oh, it's all Republicans' fault because Republicans control everything. But the reality is that you look at horrible legislation like SB 180,
Oh yeah.
and it passed almost unanimously. Democrats
Yeah.
voted for it too.
Yeah.
So it's like
Mhm.
it's not really a partisan problem. I don't think it looks that way because Republicans have all the power right now. But I know a lot of Republican politicians who are on the right side of these issues, who care about
Yeah.
conservation, who have smart ideas around land development policy. And it's also not because they're Republican, it's just because they're decent people who actually care. I mean, this is not
Right.
about,
Yeah.
it's really like in these local races like the one I'm running for are nonpartisan, and they're
Mhm.
nonpartisan for a reason. And that's because we want, I mean, the intent is that voters focus on local issues that impact them every day, and not on
Exactly.
big
Exactly.
partisan national, stuff like culture war stuff that actually
Yeah.
is, if I got elected, I would have no power over it. I would have no
Right.
power over
Right.
big national issues or what Donald Trump does or whoever. That would not be in my wheelhouse. But what's in my wheelhouse are local land use policies, local ordinances that impact citizens that live here every single
Mhm.
day. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about those things because if I get elected and if people like me get elected all over the state, that's what we're actually going to have the power to change.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I think even real quick, 'cause I would like to hear some of at least helicopter, but for even on the term, the point about the Republican stuff, like I'm gonna wait for that to go a bit farther 'cause it's gonna be in the background. Okay.
Oh, what
Even
is
on the
it?
there's a helicopter, yeah. um, even on the Republican stuff, and you're right, like I think whoever would be in power with the current way things are happening, whether it's campaign finance laws, whether it's how many developers allowed to lobby, this whole thing, whoever's in power and currently I think is going to be swayed by that interest. But even like there was right now for the at least the issue on the FWC and the special activity license, the Manta stuff, I was happy. There's, three Republican legislators who have helped, sign on the letters, help push the petition. And, they're, as Republican as they get in terms of just like, conservative. They, some of them put out like Columbus Day stuff. So they're very like, in that party line. But then the other friend, like, wait a minute, why are we taking endangered animals out of the water, or why are we developing this over
Yeah.
here? So, and I mean, my God, can we at least, like, for all Floridians, we're all gonna have different views on many things, but at least if we can have a shorter commute to work, have, cheaper groceries, have cleaner water, we have our yards that look nicer, we still have clean beaches, we can promote tourism that's effective. I think everyone wins there. And going into Volusia County, I guess what do you see specifically there as kind of like the biggest hurdles to face or to help solve?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the same things happen here as happen everywhere else,
Okay.
and just for the person I'm running against is very partisan and all into that culture war stuff. And at the end of the
Oh, okay.
day, what I believe is that voters, no matter how they feel about those things, if they're into the culture war, they whatever. I think at the end of the day, for local positions, even state positions, people are like, my house floods. What are you going to do for me? Like, this is not, I don't care about all this other stuff up in DC or wherever else because my house floods. I mean, Volusia County is the fifth most flood prone county in the United States. We have
Yeah.
600,000 residents. It's not a small place. And during Hurricane Ian, 30,000 homes flooded in Volusia County.
Jeez.
And
Wow.
and a huge contingent of those residents did not have flood insurance, and they didn't have flood insurance because they had never flooded before. And what we're
Okay.
hearing now from the types of people who foment these issues are like, oh, it's the king tides or it's the rainfall, weird. And I'm like, okay, rainfall, hurricanes, king tides are things that we have always had. We've
Yeah,
always had
yeah.
that. This is not a new phenomenon. What we haven't always had is this large scale sprawl and rampant development that has taken over all the recharge areas, the wetlands, everywhere the water used to go, it can't go
Yeah.
there anymore. So where does
Well,
it
and the
go?
science is clear on that. Like
Yeah,
it's you have a
yeah,
wetland, water's in it, you pave that over, the water has to go out, and then it gets concentrated into what's left, and that's homes, that's businesses, and even the I didn't even realize there was that many homes, but that's what I think would be an interesting policy, or I don't know how it happened, but the obviously the developers aren't, because it's always like, well, what's the insurance in Florida? What's gonna be like? Who's gonna pay for it? We're making the residents pay more. But the way I look at it is, if it's obviously a developer issue, wildland developer, mind you, are they gonna help fund the flood insurance? Are they gonna help repair homes since they're directly tied to what happened, or are they just gonna spin and say King Tide?
yeah. No, that's what they're going to do. I mean, look,
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
businessman, and a business, the most singular function of a business is to make money for the
yeah,
business and for its shareholders. And huge development companies are businesses, and their
yeah. Oh
primary
yeah,
interest be as profitable as possible. And I'm not saying regulation fixes everything, but I think
right.
they do not care about what happens to Florida, about what happens to Volusia County, about what happens to their neighbors, because they don't make any money from caring about those things. And
Right.
businesses are in the business of making money. Now, there are good and bad actors, just like anything else. But I think it's the government's job to say, you are not allowed to develop in ways that harm your neighbors. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to develop in ways that harm our environment. And that is not happening. I mean, it is to an extent, but it's not happening to the greatest extent that it should be. And it's not
Right.
happening
Right.
because, like, if you look at SB 180, for instance, horrible law that ties the hands of
Awful.
all local
Yeah.
government, it's fucking bullshit. And
Yeah.
it's unconstitutional on its face, by the
Yeah, and
way.
like, where's the freedom thing in Florida all about?
Oh,
They
yeah.
should be
I mean,
jumping on this.
home rule
Yeah,
is how people have a voice in their
yeah,
local government.
yeah,
And the state legislature is taking away your voice, even though it's enshrined in the Constitution. They don't care that it's in the Constitution. They have another law on the books that makes it very hard for cities and counties to sue over the constitutionality of a state statute, which is what they're writing on.
yeah.
Which is why 1,000 Friends has sued now, because we're not a government, so we don't have to adhere to that. You
Gotcha.
know, so
Okay.
we want to keep that legal standing. However, on tangent, but aside from that, is I lost my train of thought there. Other than to say, um, it's for me, it's about returning a common sense representation where people that live here actually have a say in what they do, and what the government does and what developers can do. And if you're going
Right.
to have an established neighborhood that was built 40 years ago on no fill, it's at sea level or a foot or two above, and then you build 10,000 homes next door that are, put on 4 feet of fill dirt above the crown
Yeah.
of the road, all that runoff is going to go to your neighbors. And
Yeah.
and the thing that really like chaps me is when they start talking about property rights in terms of developers. It kills me because I'm like, oh, so
Oh,
the
yeah.
developers have property rights, but their neighbors don't have a right to not flood
Exactly.
all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
where's our property rights? Don't we have the right to have a good life where we're not being flooded out of our house every time it rains? And
Right. Yeah.
they do they do not seem to care about that whatsoever. And again, it's not about their partisan affiliation, it's about money. It's about money because developers have poured so much money into these political campaigns, into PACs, into
Yeah.
wherever,
Realtor pack.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, you see it from the blatant corruption that's occurring in the state legislature, like with the nonsensical, purchase of that worthless land in Destin for 84 million.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Four acres. Yeah.
that was a political donor who just
Hmm.
got a huge payday with our tax money. And this is the state that wants to boast about its fiscal responsibility and
Right.
in conservative nature, but they won't turn. Like if our county, like a city here, like Edgewater, voted to join SB 180, I
Got
guarantee Blazing Goglia will be in here doging the shit out of them, in
yeah.
retaliation.
Oh yeah.
But the state will not turn that lens back on itself and say, why did you spend $84 million of our tax money on a worthless, it has no conservation value at all.
Right. And it was
And
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
at that meeting, he was because I thought it was weird how the whole thing was a lump agreement. There was that the 83 million purchase and then a few other items, and they couldn't separate it to vote on because Angolia
and
was
they could have.
yeah, and Angolia was like, well, I kind of wanna, and he's like, well, at least I'll say something against it. But obviously, if he still means that, it would still be his job to. He won't because he won't. But if he would doge that whole deal, and even like when if you want to go trim some mangroves at your house, let's say you have your the boats there, you're going out fishing, you notice the mangroves creeping up to the dock or to the lift, and you're like, I kind of don't want the mangroves getting too close. It's gonna get and everything. It's gonna get bugs on it. Let me go trim it. There's a process to do that. There's a
Oh
whole
yeah,
process to
definitely.
touching one single mangrove, and that's good. Maybe you could argue is it too far, but it's there. It's there for the private citizen at least. But down in Dania Beach, this developer is still, they've continued with the process of filling in 2.92 acres of mangroves. They still have to do it, but they've been given green lights at several stages of this process. And it's like, I can't even touch one mangrove. I can't touch it at all, which I won't. But a
Yeah.
whole company can come in and just bring forward, like the idea should never have happened. It should have been like, wait, you can't touch the mangroves. And then just no, just set, sealed, no. That's what it
Well,
should
you
be.
know what? If you gave a couple $100,000 to like Pathway to Prosperity, you probably could do it. Because
Oh, yeah.
they
Yeah.
would trip over themselves to make it happen for you.
Right.
And
And
that's
even yeah, when you said that with the money part, I think that's one thing, though it's not the best, but at least if we look at it, if we have another rise, like another wave of different candidates in Florida who are running or who want to run, there's still, power in the people, power of their purse, where, you know, at the same time they won't take developer money. It would also be important to let people know, hey, there might be these people or this person, but they're saying no to this money. But if the public, which has more money, collectively, that would really help at least, put a stop to the ones that are backed by a certain set of money. Instead of just saying, hey, if you're publicly funded, it's a grassroots effort where your donation amounts are like, 100, 250 bucks. That can at times come against odds of someone who's just getting, a few, whatever the limit is, 100,000, 200,000, depending on the
yeah.
who's giving them. So I think that's in the future, we're gonna have to think about, at least with money, that could be used as a tool to fight for conservation and wild and
Oh,
against development.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, people vote with their dollars too, and
Yeah.
like all politicians are hopeful politicians. My campaign runs on money too, and all of the money that I'm getting is coming from people, human beings.
Gotcha.
I don't take money from developers at all.
I gathered. I gathered.
But I do
Yeah.
think that's important because it gives voters a way to examine candidates and say, oh, they took a bunch of money from, a huge from Coulter or, DR Horton or whatever. And
Yeah.
I don't want to vote
Yeah.
for that person because their morals are compromised. And but look at all the people that did give them money. I mean, my neighbor gave him money. The cop down the street gave him money. The fishermen gave him money. The charter captain, the surfing dude,
Right.
that's where we need to start looking, I think. And even small businesses, like I take money from small businesses all the time because even real estate companies here I live in New Smyrna Beach, which is kind of, I'm like South, it's kind of expensive now to live here and there's a lot of
Yeah.
development
Yeah.
going on. But realtors here are not benefiting from that. Like they're
Yeah.
not being
Yeah.
included in these huge developments. They bring their own people, their own teams. So a surprising amount of support that I've got from small realtors that are just like, I'm not being included in that. I'm
Yeah.
being iced out, of the system.
Yeah, it's
And
funny you say that. Yeah. Yeah, because
yeah,
I think every day is at least, I would say at least 5 to 10 realtors, at least maybe that's wrong, but at least every week a good handful of realtors are following me or sending me DMs about, I didn't know this project, I didn't know about this. And Rochelle, also part of Floor Keepers, looked into it. But like, yeah, you have realtor packs and all these big groups, and that's separate from, the person whose job is to sell, a home to let's say, recently divorced family, and they need a new house, they need a place that's been built for a while. I think that's important to know because some people are like, oh, it's all the realtors. It's like they're kind of, I mean, they're step 3 or 4 or 5 down the line. They're not the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
one to say, hey, let's tear this whole forest.
I totally agree. And I think a lot at the end of the day, it really just comes down to being neighborly. And
Mhm.
we have like here when Ian and Milton and Nicole and I mean we just had a
Yeah.
huge flooding event last weekend and it rained 7 inches and like
Yeah, I
30
saw that.
homes in Edgewater flooded out and the people
Yeah.
and it's just horrible that even seasonally appropriate rainfall results in those kind of things. But we have people who like lose all their worldly possessions, have to move out of their house, live in a hotel for 6 months, and flood cut all their
Mhm.
drywall and everything. And then when somebody points a finger at these huge corporate development interests, like you're a contributing factor to this, even when we don't say you're 100% the cause of it, because that's not true, but you're a
Right.
contributing factor, they're like pearl clutchers, man. Like, I can't believe that you're pointing the finger. I mean, they will threaten to sue people for defamation. I just feel like society just needs to ice them out. They're bad actors. They've been behaving horribly. They don't contribute to the betterment of our society. They don't make life better for Floridians. And I think Floridians need to realize that if we do not change, life is going to get worse for all of us.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
matter what side of the aisle you're on. It really doesn't matter. I mean, the state could stay Republican forever. It could switch to Democrat, whatever, who cares? If we do not change the mindset of our voters around maintaining our, frankly, very special and unique quality of life, that
Yeah.
Floridians enjoy, it's going to be over. It's at least going to be not nearly as good. And I
Right.
don't want that for my son. And I don't want other people to have to lose the things that they care about and love just because we got the rug pulled out from under us by some, developers who invested in the political future of our state. And
Exactly.
I don't think that we don't have to stand for that, is what I'm trying to say. We don't have to stand for it. We can say,
Right.
fuck
Yeah.
you, we're done, we're voting you out, we're putting people in the seats that will represent us, represent
Mhm.
normal Floridians every day. Show up to work and do the job and grind it out, just like they used to. I mean, look at like Lot and
Yeah.
Child, I mean, this is a state that has a proud history of really strong representation. I mean, we have so much land and conservation that we can really be proud of,
Oh yeah.
and we have such great natural resources and beauty that we should be proud of, but we also have to work to keep it safe and keep us safe. I mean,
Right.
we're all one hurricane away from just being wiped off the map, dude.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, you're absolutely right. We have such a, I mean, just there's no place like Florida. There's no place where you can go to the Everglades. You have the Keys, you've got the Pinelands, and you've still got fun areas like Miami if you want to go up to Tampa, or if you want to go to Orlando, Disney, all that. But yeah, we have the conservation. We have a lot of it. But I mean, we're seeing where next year, 10, 20, 30 years really have to be about just Floridians saying enough is enough. We have the power. We're going to vote the right people. And because we want something better,
yeah,
because who knows what's going to look like in 50 years when, the people that made a lot of these decisions in the last 5, 10, 20 years are long and gone and they don't have to worry about it.
long gone. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
developers, they take the cash, they throw it in the bins, and they're out of here.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't stick around to find out how the rest of us are doing after the
Yeah.
paydays come. And I also,
Exactly.
from a bit, since we're a pro business state, and I respect
Mhm.
that. I'm a business person. I'm an entrepreneur. But at the end of the day, if we do not have safe places to live, safe water to drink, we're not going to attract businesses here. I mean, it doesn't
Right.
matter how low the taxes are. It doesn't matter how much opportunity we say there is. If people can't live here and they can't get insurance and they can't drink the water and they can't build a house that doesn't flood every summer, we're not going to have any entrepreneurial success. We're not going to have any corporate, entities moving to the state and creating jobs like we want. It's like this is a layered thing. We have to have a safe place to live that is a good place to live before we can start saying, oh, we're such a business mecca, because it won't
Right.
last. It may be true now, but if we can't get these issues under control, that's going to be the first thing to go. You know,
Yeah,
we need to keep our business friendly policies in place, but we also need to be really smart about the things that are happening subversively because 10 years from now, it's not going to be under the radar. It's going to be in our living rooms. All of us.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. No, absolutely right. But I mean, it was good to talk to you, Brian. Good to hear from you and your concerns and what you kind of what you're seeing going on in Florida. If you can, like, just share where people can get in contact with you and how they can, reach out.
Sure, sure. So my website is votebryonwhite.com. It's spelled weird. It's Bryon, white.com. You can find me on Instagram, social media, LinkedIn, I think even TikTok. I don't know. But we're all over the place. So follow us and then follow Slow the Growth Volusia. That's our advocacy
Hmm.
group. And it's growing. We have about, I don't know, 4,000 members or so now. So it's doing pretty
Awesome.
good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear from you, Brian. We'll stay in touch, and I hope all the work on Volusia stuff and just improving the community there with the flooding, all that goes well. But it's great to hear from you. Great to hear
Good
from you.
talk. Good talking to you too. Have a good one.
Awesome. Yeah, you too. You too. See ya.
Yeah.
Myself and Florida Keepers, we want to get started on a interview series where we go around the state and essentially talk to people, political, non-political, that are getting involved in, what Save Wild Florida might mean, how to enact that. Today we have Bryon White. He's up in Volusia, and so we're just gonna be chatting with him about his efforts. And for the public, this shouldn't be construed as an endorsement at this time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm again, my name is Bryon White. I'm running for Volusia County Council, District 3, which includes cities like New Smyrna Beach, Edgewater, Port Orange, Oak Hill, Osteen, that whole area. And I'm a co-founder of Yopon Brothers American Tea, which is my business side. And
Oh,
I founded an advocacy group here called Slow the Growth Volusia. And I also serve on the board of Thousand Friends of Florida.
very involved, very involved. What spurred that? Most people don't just wake up one day and want to go for office. Maybe you did, but what kind of brought that upon you?
Well, yeah, the joke I always tell people is it's like probably the worst idea I've ever had. But I guess what I would say I was frustrated into it because I have tried with a lot of other people everything else. You know, we've tried advocacy, we've tried litigation, we've tried
Okay.
activism, and I'm not saying none of those things work. They do, but the political solution here is, I think, the right path, at least for me, because I view our political system here in Florida, both at the state and local level, as being extremely compromised by development, industry, and interests. And we just have to change that. I think we have to change that first and foremost. We need to put people
Okay.
in the seat who are members of the community who actually care.
If you're interested in Wild Florida, running for office is probably a much more viable option than just continuous email campaigns, which sometimes work, sometimes don't. But kind of going into the more of the what's really going on in Florida, because we've got the FWC commissioners, we've got the FDEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, we've got just the land developers themselves. Corruption's always there, but arguably getting worse. From your experience or what you've done, where do you kind of see, if you have to mostly point a finger, or maybe it's not just one person, but where would you say this is really where it's coming from? This is really where they're taking the voice from Floridians.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, the fundamental and most serious problem at every level, you know, whether it's the state legislature or local governments, is the development industry, or the special interests that are peripheral to the industry, have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into our political system over the last several decades.